The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
Want to join the eSports party, but not exactly sure if you fit in?
The 90% of people that play the games, that watch eSports, they know where to find the games. And, but for everyone else, even if they knew how to where to find and how to keep up and track and follow these eSports matches, they still have to enjoy watching it. They still can't be completely confused by what's happening. They still can't feel overwhelmed.
That's Matt Gunnin, founder and CEO of eSports One, where broadening the viewing experience is the hope to widen the ever-growing eSports tent. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Matt Gunnin sold his first company as a teenager, so he's been innovating his entire life. He's a huge sports fan, as you're going to hear in our interview, and it dawned on him that those visual enhancements that make watching a football or a baseball game so inclusive, esports hadn't really implemented that yet. So he swapped out his gaming headset for the traditional sports hat to ask a big question. What would help those who didn't grow up playing watch? Our guest this week is Matt Gunnin, who is the founder and the CEO of eSports One, a first all-in-one fantasy esports platform with real-time predictive data. Hey, Matt, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well, Bram. Thanks for having me.
I don't know how to start any conversation with anyone without asking just how's life right now?
It's raining right now in Santa Monica, so that just adds, another element to things when, the only thing the best thing that we have here in LA is the weather. So, but other than that, we're hanging in there. Like it's, you take every day kind of, step at a time, and you kind of just, you work through the ups and downs. But right now, it's just we're hanging in there, and we're for being in an industry that kind of does pretty well when people are kind of stuck at home. We're seeing growth on that end. But overall, it's a crazy time for everyone.
We'll talk about the opportunity in a moment, but let's introduce everyone to eSports One first. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we've been in esports for about 2.5 years. Started the company out of MIT and out of New York. We got started out in New York, moved to Boston, and built the company from with a bunch of engineers at MIT. And then we moved to LA about a year and a half ago, and have been in LA ever since. So at our core, we're a stats and data company within esports that wants to change the way fans watch and engage with, professional gaming. And what we built a computer vision, machine learning powered platform that's capable of capturing, and analyzing thousands of data points in real time. So, you can think of it like in the sense of if you're watching a football game, you have that yellow first down line that's, very instrumental in telling you what the objective of the team is. They're trying to get to the first down line to get another, set of downs. And esports, when I started the company, I looked at esports as, not having that yellow first down line, essentially. It was missing that sort of element of engagement that was, necessary to make it more enjoyable for the entire spectrum of viewers. And so we built this, engagement platform layer that kind of, provides just more information to viewers while they're watching. And then from there, we leveraged, all this technology, all this data that we built. And earlier this year, we launched eSports One Fantasy. And so eSports One Fantasy is the first all-in-one fantasy esports platform. And it provides users with, weekly, daily, real-time fantasy experiences, similar to DraftKings and Yahoo, but it's taking kind of all of the different elements and bringing into one and making that just a kind of an all-in-one experience, essentially.
Can you explain or be specific about that? And listen, my age will show here. I know what
Sure.
fantasy sports is, obviously, with football, baseball, basketball, whatever, and what that means. In the esports world, what does that look like? What does a gaming situation look like in fantasy?
Sure. So fantasy, there's not a lot of differences when it comes to just, the general construct of what fantasy is, between football and League of Legends. You're building a lineup of individual players. So you have a quarterback in football. You have a mid laner in League of Legends. In football, you have a wide receiver. In League of Legends, you have a jungler, and you have 5 different sort of positions in League of Legends where you have you build a lineup with, in the same way that you kind of do it with in football. And then you also pick a team, similar to picking a defense in football. Where we kind of take that, take it one step further, is we start to incorporate, parts that are specific to the game, but also can be, attributed in real time. So I guess, I use a lot of analogies to traditional sports and specifically football. I'm a big football fan. You can think of it like, all right, I'm gonna make a lineup. I'm gonna pick quarterback, wide receiver, a running back, a defense, and then during the games that my players are playing, imagine you're also getting kind of questions being asked you. Will if you have Tom Brady on your lineup, is Tom Brady going to hand the ball off, or is he going to throw it? More likely, he's going to throw it. And just you start to add these real-time engagement, level layers that, as well as all these other people are starting to, that you're competing with, are also being presented. And so you can imagine, not only is it the passive experience of building a lineup, but once you start to then add in this real-time experience, I think it just it adds a whole nother dynamic to that whole viewing experience of esports.
And I assume that there will be a money exchange at some point. Maybe not now, but you're looking at it as a DraftKings FanDuel model, correct?
You're right. So we're starting with building out our monetization is based around event. We're calling them event passes, and which will come later this year. And essentially, it's specific to various events, various leagues. Monetization is something that we're looking at closely, and kind of we're kind of figuring out what's going to work best within esports. If it was a one-to-one, traditional to esport, if their daily fantasy worked perfectly within esports, it would have already been done by now. Like it would already be replicated, and people would but I think the esports industry, I think the traditional daily fantasy experience isn't going to work in esports. Yeah. I think it has to be done a bit differently. Yes, money will obviously, will have to be a part of that equation, whether it's in the form of, subscriptions, virtual currency, a virtual economy, or some sort of, pay to play sort of type leagues. We're still evaluating that, and we'll start to implement the first phase of that a little bit later this year.
I don't want to get caught up on this, because I actually want to go back to the innovation part. That stuff is fascinating. But in terms of integrity, obviously, listen, these traditional sports have been around a long time. There's a lot of people that monitor what is happening in and out of this. This is still kind of new and nascent, at least from a fantasy and frankly, betting type perspective. What concern do you have about integrity if you were to offer things like this?
So it's such a good question, because I worked, so before I started Esports One, I was an executive VP at Unicorn, which was a gambling company in esports, real money gambling company in esports, but I've also been in esports for I think I'm going on 12 years now, and so I've seen all the different facets of this space and seen the growth of it, seen the people that were part of the early days of, of literally, this was back when there were tournaments in basements, and, people were winning $1,000 and now they're winning $10 million in tournaments, and seeing that growth. and so I've seen the growth and just become more mature. And I think the biggest thing is it's become a more mature and industry. But there are still a lot of areas of not concerns. There's a lot of areas of growth still needed within esports. You're right, like traditional sports, football. They have player associations. They have they are much more structured when it comes to the dynamics of the NFL and the teams and the players and so there's and then they've gone through that process. They've kind of ran into these trials and tribulations as they've grown as a game or a sport. Esports is still figuring those pieces out, and so integrity when it comes to just when you have these kids, they have their you have to think these kids are 18, 19 years old. Never left their parents' house before. They're being thrown into a situation where they're now one of the best Call of Duty or League of Legends or Madden football players out there, and and people are kind of are kind of twerk in their ear, and and so there's opportunity for them to kind of sway outside the lines and start to maybe take a $500 to throw the game or something. And that's been an issue within the space, I think. But it's also the game publishers have really taken a stance of if there's any signs of negligence or taking it or throwing the game or anything. I mean, you're banned for life, and so they've taken a hard stance. I think that's what it's going to take. I feel that we're getting much better, but there's still, every week, every month, you still hear of these issues that are popping up, whether it's through cheating, whether it's through throwing games, whether it's through, some form of working with, some, group of people, in another country that are paying you to throw the games, and it's just a part of the growth of the industry. And I think it's just going to take time for it to improve, and it's going to be up to the game publishers to really kind of flush it out, and then for companies like ours to just pay close attention and not put ourselves in a position where we're making the news about it. We're working with the game publishers to support the matches and support the part of the industry that is the most stable. And that's where League of Legends, for example, they have franchises. They have a very structured environment. They have very clear rules. They have a players association to an extent they've implemented. So right now, that is what we support. We support League of Legends, Riot Games, and as the industry grows, we'll start to expand that support.
Let's go back to the innovation for a moment. I was really fascinated by that. So you described it as, hey, football's, got this yellow line that changed the way we viewed it by putting in to show people exactly where the first down marker was. Specifically, tell me about some of the innovations you're talking about for the games that has made it a more enjoyable viewing experience.
Yeah, I mean, so you have the yellow first down line. You have these stats in baseball and football, whether it's slugging percentage is still pretty young and a new statistic. There's 100 different sort of stats that have started to enter the various industries or games that make it more help the entire audience, not just those that are the hardcore analysts and data junkies, but help everyone better understand. I still don't know what a quarterback rating, like how the math is. I know it's like 147.2 or some weird number, but I know that someone that has a higher quarterback rating than another quarterback, I know that quarterback, according to all the different stats that they've calculated, is better to an extent, for the most part, than this other quarterback. And it gives some sort of ranking. It gives some sort of, if I'm not able to watch every game that so and so plays, can at least look at these one or these different statistics and understand, all right, who is the better player, for the most part. If I want to know who the best, kind of person that gets on base is in baseball, I know, I look at on base percentage. So these esports hasn't had those sort of stats as like they being in our early industry and early, kind of early to building out sort of that framework of traditional sports. They're a lot of these stats haven't entered the space. And I think that's going to be one of the parts that's going to be very fun to watch is, what is the on base, what is the quarterback rating, what is the slugging percentage, within esports. And that's one thing that we're doing at Esports One is we have all of these stats. We position ourselves as like a Stats Inc. or a Sports Radar, esque of esports. We've compiled as many data points as possible, as many statistics on the players and the teams as possible. And that's allowed us to start building out these more comprehensive data points that makes it so that ultimately it's easier to understand for the broader audience.
Yeah,
and I think that's where the innovation is going to really start to take strides. Is that right now it's 90+% of people that watch esports play the games. That's not the case in football. There's less than probably 1/1000th of a percent actually play football, that actually watch football, and that's because football is just over time. It's become a much easier game to watch. Esports hasn't gotten to that point yet. It's still you need to play the game if you want to understand what's happening, and where the innovation is going to come is making that more enjoyable for the broader audience, and making it so that everyone feels confident in whether it's making a bet on a team, building a fantasy lineup, sitting there with their kid, and instead of watching a baseball game and at Fenway Park, they're watching a League of Legends tournament at Riot Games, studios together, and they both understand what's happening. That's where it's going to be really exciting to see how the industry unfolds.
that is interesting. The other part too is, and what's very different about the dissemination of all of this is, football games have been on linear networks for a very long time. You know where to find it. You know what time of day it's at. Finding these tournaments is still kind of Wild West. Like ESPN has picked up some of this. You'd have to know what Twitch is to find that type of thing. And so when you're looking for this broader audience, as you think about, we're going to educate them, we're going to broaden this, it's not going to be as insular as it's been. We're going to try to bring in as big an audience as we can. How do you go about not only doing that, but finding everybody and getting them to a place where they would congregate to watch it?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of partners that we've worked with that, so one area that you watch, football games, you watch baseball games, is you go to a bar and you're sitting there having wings and you're watching, all these football games in a bar setting with a bunch of buddies and whatnot. That has been attempted in esports to try to bring that same sort of, to replicate what traditional sports has done when it comes to, the bar type feel. And believe me, I would love if I could go to, a Dave and Buster's and whatnot. And yes, sometimes they'll have an esports game on here and there, but for the most part, that it hasn't worked. That replication hasn't worked. What is starting to work is there's starting to be more, online areas for people to, start to watch games together and to kind of find, to kind of bring that same level of, enjoyment with. So one thing, Discord. So Discord is a big chat, applications. It's for gamers. It's where hundreds of millions of different gamers kind of hang out and chat with one another. They've implemented this, feature where you can, watch an esports match or watch a stream or a YouTube video or a movie, and you can watch it with a group of friends. And it makes it so that, even if you're in different, if you're, spread out all over the world or spread out all over the states, it makes it so that you can watch a event together in like a in a group kind of environment, and and get the most out of it with one another. We're not going to see we're not going to see tomorrow on NBC or ABC. We're not going to see Sunday night League of Legends. Like, it's not it's not coming anytime soon. Esports lives online. It lives on Twitch. It lives on Facebook gaming. It lives on YouTube. And yeah, I agree. It can be very daunting to try to keep up with when the next Rainbow Six tournament is, or Call of Duty show matches. But there's becoming more ways for people to, once they find that game or that tournament or that event to watch, to enjoy it together.
Yeah.
The area that's being addressed by a couple of startups here and there, and you have you have Pop Dog, you have Jukes, you have these different sort of companies that are starting to try to address that exact kind of opportunity or problem. And I think that's where another level of innovation is going to have to come from, is kind of making it easier for the broader audience to watch esports. But again, it doesn't matter if the 90% of people that play the games that watch esports, they know where to find the games. And but for everyone else, even if they knew where to find and how to keep up and track and follow these esports matches, they still have to enjoy watching it. They still can't be completely confused by what's happening. They still can't feel overwhelmed. And so what esports in this industry has to do is look at it as like, how can we, make it so it's easier for the broader audience? If we put a League of Legends tournament or an Overwatch tournament in front of them, how can we make that experience as enjoyable and not overwhelming, and as exciting as possible, while also educating them on what's happening, so that once they they're sitting there watching the next tournament, that they don't, if it does pop up on NBC or ESPN next go around, that they don't quickly change the channel, that they sit there for a bit, because they've already kind of gone through that first threshold of watching the game. And it's the same as when you're a young kid and the first time you watch a football game, you're sitting there with your dad's sitting there telling you what's I remember when I was young, my dad would we would watch college football, and I had no idea what was happening, but he would be telling me these things about the quarterback and the plays that they're running and what the rules are, and why did they throw that yellow thing that just flew up in the air, and why is the referee holding his hands up like that. And that was my experience, is sitting there and being taught what's happening in football by my dad. And now let's kind of take that same experience and apply it to esports. But instead of the dad explaining it to the son, think of it in the sense of, all right, now the son is sitting there playing the game and playing in a big tournament, and the dad is watching it in his on his couch, or there was a big Fortnite tournament with 100 different kids that were all playing for $2-3 million. And I can guarantee you 99% of the parents that were watching had no idea what was going on. So how do we first address that opportunity of making that, that experience right there as easy to jump into as possible?
When you can travel again, come to my house. My 7-year-old would love to talk to you, because I'm trying to show him Redskins Cowboys games, and he's trying to show me Fortnite. So we could use your intervention,
exactly.
Matt.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm a huge Cowboys fan.
Well,
huge. Yeah.
I'm a huge Redskins fan, so we'll be on the other side of that. Maybe we can agree on some esports.
Yeah. It's and I think it's exciting. Like that is one thing that I've kind of made these comparisons all along the way of of just flipping that switch of the different of taking that experience as growing up, and now parents, if we can kind of make that adoption for parents and the kind of the older generation, because they're wanting, their kids everyone's playing Fortnite, everyone's playing Call of Duty, everyone's playing Overwatch, whatever it might be, especially right now, more than ever. So if we can, and parents are paying $100 per hour for coaching to get their kids better at Fortnite. But if my dad, when I was growing up, if he paid $100 an hour for batting practice, with a coach, and he didn't know that, he couldn't tell if I was getting better or not, he would stop paying for coaching. He wouldn't be paying for it anymore. But imagine a parent nowadays paying $100 an hour for Fortnite coaching. Can they tell if the kid is actually getting any better or not, or are they just kind of like, that is that sort of lever that's missing. That's that sort of kind of gray area that I think we have to make the overall kind of understanding of esports easier.
Matt Gunnin is the founder and the CEO at eSports One. Matt, that was fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us. On the next Future Sport podcast, when you finally return to the gym, it may be a whole new world.
So we're making smart equipment that knows the exerciser and helps them achieve their goals, as well as a range of software products, the most prominent being a mobile application for gyms.
John Ford is the CEO of eGym as fitness is forced into its new future. That will do it for us this week. Remember, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.